And this one is a tactical skirmish game that allows players to play all sorts of different scenarios over different types of maps and terrain. One of the things that makes this one a little bit more unique compared to other tactical skirmish games is that this one also features a legacy campaign where players will be trying to play as different factions, trying to end up with their faction in the best position possible at the end of the campaign. But that's not the only thing that makes this one unique, because it also features a few different mechanisms that I haven't really seen in too many other skirmish style games. And the first one is that each player is going to be starting with their own secret information specific to that mission, meaning that each side is going to have some sort of competitive advantage that's going to be a little bit different than their opponents. Not only that, but this game has a really interesting way that it introduces new units into the board, because unlike a lot of other tactical skirmish games where you just either already have the units or you just purchase them and deploy them, in this game you actually have to build your units, because this game actually takes place in the future and players' units are going to be represented by different machines or robots that you're going to have to manufacture before you can deploy them out on the board. This means that in addition to controlling your units out on the board and trying to attack and defend against the other player, you're also going to have to build different factories in order to manufacture those units, which will come later in the game. And then once they've been fully manufactured, then you'll be able to deploy them out on the board. And the way that all of this works is that after players have set up for that specific scenario, players are just going to be alternating back and forth taking their turns. Each turn is going to be broken up into two different phases. You're going to be starting with your activation phase, and then you're going to be moving into your production phase. During the activation phase, you're going to be able to move each of your units that you've built so far out on the main board. And for each of those units, you'll be able to perform a movement action, and then you'll also be able to perform a tactical action. And there's a bunch of different tactical actions to choose from, but some of the main ones are to either issue an attack against an enemy unit within range. And normally whenever you're doing this for the first time against a specific unit, that enemy unit will get one counterattack against your unit that attacked it. But then there's also the option to perform a suppression attack. And this one's different than an attack because it doesn't actually issue any damage, but it prevents that unit from being able to issue a counterattack. So if you first issue a suppression and then attack it with another one of your units, then you don't have to worry about being counterattacked because you have already prevented that. But like I said, you will be building different buildings and units throughout the game, and in order to do that, you do need resources. So one of the other actions that your units can do is to load or unload ore that you can acquire throughout the game. Or players could also choose to use their tactical action to do other things like repair bridges that they might have built, or to even sell some of their buildings that they no longer intend to use. But after the active player has activated all of their units, then they're going to be moving into the production phase. And the interesting thing about this phase is that most of it is done in secret, because you will have player screens hiding a lot of the information from the other player. But you'll be able to do a few different things like advance new units through the production in your factories. And you're going to be tracking this on a track, moving different units down that track until they get to the ready location. And once they're there, then they're ready to deploy. Different units have different stats as well as different requirements when it comes to manufacturing them. This means that some of your units could take longer to manufacture than others, and you don't actually have to deploy them as soon as they're ready for deployment. You can actually hold them back and deploy them when it's more strategic. But the other really important thing that players can do during their production phase is to also build new buildings. And the only requirement with building new buildings is that you need the resources in order to do it. But you can also only build buildings within 2 hexes of one of the buildings that you already control. This means that players are going to be sprawling through the map as they take up more control of different regions, and then build more and more buildings off of that. And the game continues like this, with players alternating turns going through these 2 phases until the end of the scenario is triggered. Once one of the players are able to reach their win condition, then that player would win that scenario. And if you're playing in the legacy campaign, that would affect the future of the campaign. But if you're just playing in a one-shot scenario, players can reset and play any scenario that they prefer. But if this one does sound interesting to you, you can check it out, and I do have links to the campaign in the description below.